In a recent video, I talked about the Chinese-style censorship. And the reason I find this concerning is that if the Chinese government, which could choose pretty much any way it wants to censor and social engineer population, the fact that they chose this particular one to use social media on a point-based system means that this particular method has to be one of the most effective methods there is in order to control a population and make it more docile to the whims of the government. And as such, we in the West need to be aware of this method and we need to fight it, regardless if it's coming from the government or from private corporations. In the previous video, I went in detail what this method is, so if you want to check that out before watching this video, you definitely should. However, here I just want to talk about the rewards and the punishments in the Chinese system and describe what happens if you are considered to be a trustworthy person, aka have a lot of points on social media, versus what happens if you happen to be an untrustworthy person, meaning that you get banned off social media or you get very few points. And as a quick reminder, you get points if you promote government propaganda, if you pay your bills on time, if you are a quote-unquote good citizen, and you lose points if you post things that go against the government. There's a journalist that got deplatformed because he exposed corruption in the government. And other smaller activities. I understand you can lose points if you play too many video games because the government considers that to be unproductive. You can lose points if you smoke, if you're caught smoking inside the building, so on and so forth. So life becomes almost like a role-playing game where every day you go to work and you try to gather as many points, almost like it's a Black Mirror episode. Very horrible indeed. So let's talk about the punishments and the rewards for having too many or too little points. The punishment can range from banning you from flying or getting on the train. Now, this might not seem as a big thing, but in a country big as China, where people have to use the train in order to travel, it can definitely affect your job. If you do not get to job on time, you can get fired. As such, people who normally would wake up at 7, they might have to wake up at 5 in order to do the walk required to get to their job because they can't use the train anymore. A person that's a journalist, a freelancer, or a blogger who might require to travel and go to other countries in order to get reporting and material from there will be unable to perform his job because he has been banned from the train. 9 million people with low scores have already been blocked from buying tickets for domestic flights, according to Channel News Asia, which did this reporting on March. They can also clamp down on luxury options. 3 billion people are barred from getting business class train tickets. I guess this is almost like a warning. First you get banned from the luxury option and then you can get banned from the train entirely. And the eventual system will punish bad passengers specifically. Potential misdeeds include trying to ride with no ticket, loitering in front of boarding gates, or smoking in no smoking areas. Now, take into account how the system is being implemented. Several of these things are quite agreeable. Like, people will say, yeah, I mean, if you travel with no ticket, it's reasonable that you will get a ban. And this is how censorship is being always introduced. It has like this common sense notion that people say, yeah, you know, that sounds common sense. But then it has the part that has nothing to do with the thing. So for example, the journalist that I spoke about who exposed corruption in the government, he was traveling with train tickets. He wasn't loitering. He wasn't smoking in the train, yet he had his access to a train ticket removed because he exposed corruption in the government. So you can see how conniving the system is. Most people will agree with the initial stages, but once you allow the initial stages to have their foot on the door, the rest of the system comes in to give you a shag. The other one can be throttling your internet speed. And the author by the name Rachel Boatsman published this part on her book on tech security on Wired last year. Now, people don't know the exact technological mechanics on how this is done, but apparently the credit system monitor whether people pay the bills on time, much like financial credit trackers, but also ascribe a moral dimension. Other mooted punishable offenses including spending too long playing video games, wasting money on frivolous purchases, and posting on social media. So again, the government is going to decide what is a frivolous purchase or not. The government is going to decide how much you're allowed to play video games or not. Um, I don't know if I would want this. I mean, I know there are some people who really love the government and they really enjoy having someone else telling them what to do, like having a nanny. But I think most adults are capable of managing their time and money in order to have productive lives. Now, of course, there might be exceptions. There might be a couple of people who can't stop playing video games and this will affect their relationships and their families, but that is their problem. Why should people like me who can properly manage my time be affected because Jimmy the Twat is unable to stop playing video and is always going to go late to work? Why not the government focus on investing money to get Jimmy the Twat to fix his shit so that I don't have to suffer from him? Moving forward, banning you or your kids from best schools. Now, this is really painful when you're going to start hurting the future of the children, because obviously parents are going to be quite afraid not to post something offensive on social media, not to do something that the government doesn't like, because now it's not just their future at stake, it's also their children's future. So apparently 17 people who refused to carry out military service last year were barred from enrolling in higher education, applying for high school or continuing their studies. In July, a Chinese university denied an incoming student his spot because the student's father had a bad social credit score. So again, notice how this works. Initially, they talk about, well, if you don't serve military service, you're not going to get access to these schools. Like, these are prestigious schools reserved for military people only. It's like it's a perk if you want to save and defend your country. Okay, like a lot of people that are patriots are going to buy into this. It's like, okay, if you go to the military, you get this perk. You get to the best schools. But then as the system gets in, as it puts its foot in the door, you notice that, oh, even people that had a bad social credit score now can be barred from going to certain universities. And the system can always expand. Like, something that's okay today, in 2 years it can become wrong. And people will be in a constant fear in what they post on social media. Number 4, and this is quite obvious, stopping you from getting the best jobs. In my opinion, this already happens in the West. Like, there's a lot of people who got fired over posting something on the Twitter. It's not government sanctioned, but it is basically offending the morality of some activists or breaking the TOS on some platform, which will leave the mainstream media giving a shitstorm in order to try to get that person fired. Trust breaking individuals, this is how they're called, because all of this is about trust. Like, again, notice how the language is used in order to manipulate what this is about. This is about control and authority. It's not about trust. It's not about making sure that we create a better society. No, it's making sure that you create a society that simply listens to whatever the party tells them to listen and believes whatever the party tells them to believe. Individuals would also be banned from doing management jobs in state-owned firms and big banks. Some crimes like fraud and embezzlement would also have a big effect on social credit. So you can see the mixture between the public and the private. Well, in China, there is no such thing, but the mixture between law and social media. So, for example, if you commit crimes, you lose your social media credit score. In the West, it seems almost to be reversed. Like, whenever they write an article about Milo Yiannopoulos, they will mention that he has been banned from PayPal and other sites. Whenever they write an article about Alex Jones, they will mention that he has been banned from social media. Whenever they make an article about Sargon of Akkad, they will mention that he had got banned from Twitter. And you can see how the mainstream media, well, some of it at least, treats this as almost a criminal punishment. Like, being banned from Twitter is something that holds some weight in society. It's like, well, clearly he is a horrible person. Look, he got banned from social media. It's almost like this bourgeoisie morality that's being implemented into people's minds to think that only decent people are allowed on Facebook and Twitter. And if you got banned from Facebook and Twitter, clearly you did something indecent and you have been ostracized from civilized society. Another punishment is keeping you out of the best hotels. People who refuse military service were also banned from some holiday and hotels, showing that vacation plans are fair game too. The regime rewards people here as well as punishes them. People with good scores can speed up travel applications to places like Europe. An unidentified woman in Beijing also told the BBC in 2015 that she was able to book a hotel without having to pay a cash deposit because she had a good score. Again, like these are the incentives, the carrot, if you will, in order to get people to follow and toe the line, and also, give you social cred to brag about to other people. And I bet that this woman that we talk about from the BBC, I bet that she is very much in favor of the system. She might even criticize people who want the system gone. It's something very interesting that I noticed from the people in my country. After communism fell, a lot of old women really despised it. They want communism back. They want the system back. And when you look into why they want to, it's because they had a very cushy life. Like maybe some of them were informers or rats, and as such they got privileges. Maybe some of them were working at a shop and they were able to sell things under the table and make an extra buck out of it. So because of the nepotism, because of the corruption, and because the system was in their favor, of course they loved communism. Everyone else was starving, but they were getting rich because they were abusing their position. So I'm pretty sure that this idea of, giving people benefits like better hotels, better traveling expenses, better this and that, is going to actually get a portion of the population to absolutely adore and love the system and ask more of it rather than less. Now we also see some more hideous punishments, like hitting at the emotional level. Losing your kids, losing your dog. Apparently the Eastern Chinese of Jinan started enforcing a social credit system for dog owners in 2017, where pet owners get points deducted if the dog is walked without a leash or causes public disturbances, and those who lost all their points had their dogs confiscated and had to take a test on regulations required for pet ownership. And again, keep in mind that this is still in the beta phases. Like the system is not fully operational. They're just testing it out, and I think they're wanting to see the response on different people in different areas of society. So they're going to tackle with pet owners, with parents, with people who have jobs that they need to commute, and see how responsive they are. And the final version of the system is probably going to be the most horrible. After they gather all the data and they see how people respond negatively or positively to the system, they're going to implement that, and it's going to be absolutely catastrophic, in my opinion, to live in China. Hopefully this never comes in the EU or in the West, ever. And then 7, public shaming, being publicly named as a bad citizen. Naming and shaming is another tactic. Encourages companies to consult the blacklist before hiring people or giving them contracts. However, people will be notified by the courts before they are added to the list and are allowed to appeal against the decision within 10 days. So at least I like the West, where you get fired if you said something naughty on the Twitter. At least here, you manage to get an appeal. You can actually sue the state if they take your points and you believe it's unlawful. We already have a prototype blacklist that already exists, and it has already been used to punish people. Now, there's far more, and I wanted to keep this video short. But what I want to point out is the power of social media. It is something that we have never seen in the past. The human communication never experienced such a development like today. And with the new invention comes great power. And people need to watch that this power is kept in check, because other governments that are authoritarian noticed about this power and they're taking advantage of it. And they do this because, as I said in the beginning, it is the most efficient way of going around doing things. Now, here in the West, there's a lot of people that are constantly afraid of the government, and that is with good reason. Like, the government is something that people need to be skeptical of. However, people also need to be skeptical of private companies, especially social media, because they can have the power to control how people think and how people act. If you know that you post something that's offensive and it can get you fired, people will stop posting those things. And in a world where everyone has a megaphone, your voice becomes simply a whisper.